Okay, so we're going to start the Q&A now. So let's welcome back the filmmakers back to the stage. Excellent. So before we get started, can you just talk a little bit about, so you already mentioned that it played in Hawaii, so I'm just curious what the response was out there.
Oh, gosh. So it was the closing night selection for the Hawaii International Film Festival last November, and it actually sold out. So the Hawaii Theater was a historic theater, 1,400 seats, and it sold out several weeks before it started. I mean, because the story is so important to Hawaii and people in Hawaii, and there's so many people in it as well. You know, of course, they wanted to see themselves. There are a lot of Easter eggs. Like the current, there's the 100th Battalion, 442nd Regimental Combat Team is actually still active. It's an active unit, and it's stationed at Fort Shafter. And the real guys, so the current soldiers, were actually in the film playing themselves. Yeah, so a lot of things like that. Yeah, but it sold out like 12 theaters at that film festival.
Yeah, and it was at the International Hawaiian Film Festival?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we actually weren't even really done with the movie.
I really can't emphasize enough how important this story is to people from Hawaii, people who, it seems like everyone in Hawaii has a connection to the 442 in some way, so our film there really was an event, you know, and it's so specific to Hawaii, and I think it's one of the reasons I'm so proud to share it, because I think it's a true, authentic Hawaii story.
It's great. So, yeah, so historically, I think a lot of people know about World War II and in Pearl Harbor, but not so much necessarily about the people that made up the regiment that went abroad, that proved themselves, as you mentioned at the end of the film. How important was it for both of you to tell the story? Because I know for the writing process, you can write a script and maybe option it, or you make it yourself. Because, I mean, all these years since World War II, I don't know if there's been a 442 film, right? I mean, there was Go for Broke, but it was more like a training film where they showed them kind of like working out. But, but can you talk about that? Like the independent process, having a story that you know about and wanting to do it.
Yeah, so these veterans in the film have become very dear friends of mine. So I've been working on this for like 17 years. Yeah, so for a long time, and people know what Pearl Harbor looked like, but they don't know what the local Hawaii population was doing. And I'm positive that nobody on the mainland, really knew about the Varsity Victory Volunteers. And actually, while I have a chance, I'd like to recognize King Lit Ching up there. He's the son of Hung Wai Ching.
Can you
kind of
wave your hand, or he's right in the front right here?
So Hung Wai Ching, and he was so integral. He was dubbed the father of the Varsity Victory Volunteers, and all these things wouldn't have happened. There would be no 442 without the original 100th Battalion and the 442nd. And the Varsity Victory Volunteers. Yeah, and so these guys who are still alive, so Ted Tsukiyama, Akira Otani, Bishop Fujitani, Akira and Ted are going to be 98 this year. So it was, and they always feel like forgotten because, people don't know who the VV is. They know who the 442 is. Yeah.
And then, as far as directing goes, it seems, so it's a very big film. It has many components to it. The ensemble was big, and then also the scope, the time frame of it all. Like, it went over since the beginning in 1941 to all the way. Yeah, so
like a year and a half.
Yeah, so there's a lot of time development and things like that. So can you just talk about the decisions you had to make as a director working on the film, and how you would approach it all?
Well, like Lexi was saying, she wrote the script, and I feel like by making that comic book, you had kind of had the story figured out over many years. So, like, she made it very clear to me, like, which stories we should focus on and what's important. But once you start production, especially in something like this, it was a whirlwind production. You don't even think about it. You just focus one day at a time. And luckily, we had a script that tied all these stories together well. So I just had to focus day to day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess on that note, how long was your production?
So we initially shot 20 days, and then we came back over a month's time, and then we came back twice for 3 more days, so 26 total.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
26. Yeah, it was very packed.
Yeah.
So that last scene that you saw, in the marching down King Street, yeah, we had like hundreds of extras, and those are all volunteers.
Wow.
And I just can't stress enough, I mean, this movie would not have been possible without the love and support of the people of Hawaii.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have, like, we had a grant from the state, but that was really nothing,
Okay.
I mean, it was very painful, actually.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about that.
Food for our extras, it was donated, like, Roy Yamaguchi, he gave us like 60 bentos, and he brought them himself, he doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Jake Shimabukuro,
Yeah.
he's a friend from high school, but he wrote the soundtrack, and he donated everything, he paid for the recording, everything, and so this is truly a labor of love, not just on, our part, but the state, really.
No, definitely. I mean, and I think that's what's important in general about a film that you are a part of. You make it yourself, but also it's a community-involved process.
Yeah.
On that, does anyone have any questions? Any questions from the audience? Okay, somebody, in the back.
Stacy, you're a very young woman. What triggered your passion?
I'm not that young.
What triggered your passion on this story? Because it is a small group of people. Many of them have passed away. You said you worked on it for 17 years, so that's a really long time to stick with this.
It is. You're right, and it was very painful. I won't lie to you. Many times I did just be like, "Screw this! This is terrible." But it's really the veterans themselves. And so when I was a kid, I was my great uncle, so my grandfather's younger brother, was in the original 100th Battalion. So my dad would tell me, "Oh, Uncle Ko, he was a hero. He was the one puka puka." And I'm thinking, he's like, "Oh, they were heroes. They were the most highly decorated unit." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm 9, I'm a girl, ancient history, I don't care, But somewhere along the way, I guess I did start caring, because I found a paper that I had written in high school about how the 100 and the 442 changed the socioeconomic status of Japanese in Hawaii. So it did sink in, but really when I started working on this, it was because of these tax credits, and that they had passed in Hawaii, and I thought, we should tell our own stories because Hawaii has so much rich history and stories to share. And then I got to know the veterans, and that's really what kept me going, because they started passing away. And I mean, like the footage that you see of most of them, they've all gone, and so Eddie Yamasaki, actually we don't have footage of him, but he was a 442 vet, and it was actually his birthday yesterday. He passed away last year, and so I was able to show him like our rough footage, and but he really helped me. Like I dragged him around the Capitol, lobbying for the funding for this, and he really but it's really the veterans and getting to know them, and they really became like my family, and that's what kept me going. Yeah.
That's great. Are there any other questions?
What happened to Sharky's dad and
The question was what happened to Sharky's dad and Akira's dad?
Yeah, so in real life, they did come back. Actually, all the Buddhist priests were taken, and they were held together. Actually, there's a photo of them, like, at a internment camp. As for Akira's father, Matsujiro Otani, he really was the founder of the Honolulu fish auction, and it's still going today. The footage of Akira is actually at his desk. He still goes into work, every day. Yeah, it's crazy. But it was sad, funny that, well, not funny that you asked, but the fishing industry in Hawaii during the war was like just wiped out, because all the people who went fishing were Japanese. So all the fishing boats and other boats were seized by the government, and some of them were, used for military purposes. And then after, the war, Akira was able to use his military service to kind of help his father come back and, not die. He was a sick man. He had a heart problem. And then he came back and rebuilt the fishing industry in Hawaii. So that's why you have pokeballs. Seriously, I'm totally serious.
Origin of 442 and pokeballs.
Yay!
There was a question? Over. Okay, yeah, in the back.
Yeah, a comment and 2 questions. I've seen a lot of movies about 442nd and Pearl Harbor. but this is the first time I really saw a movie about the family and the conflict between the Nisei boys and their parents. The parents, of course, were really confused, not knowing which loyalty they should face. So, but the questions I had were really two production questions. When we first saw Yoshida and Ching, they were identified, but not Shivers. And next to him, I presume, was Masashi Morimoto, but they weren't identified. And the second production question was, when you shot the planes going overhead, was that computer generated or was that for real?
Dean will be so happy.
No, we have the planes. Yeah, we don't need those.
Oh yeah, I've seen those planes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so that was computer generated. Actually, very complicated story, but our producer had to step in and do some effects last minute for us, and he did that one, and I'm glad that it worked so well. In terms of not calling out their names are said, but unfortunately, just with the flow of things, we couldn't put title cards like we did for many of the other characters. Maybe we should have. Yeah, we almost did, but
Because
just...
there's so many characters.
Yeah, there's over 50 speaking parts, so I could see how it, you know, we just had to make some choices there. But yeah, that was Masashi Morimoto and Robert, and then Jack Burns
Oh, yeah.
was also there.
Had like 2 lines.
Yeah.
Who was also the PAO for Schofield. We shot at Schofield Barracks for a week.
Hi. So I remember there was a what was that one a Just Kidding film co-founder Jojo. He was talking about like Go for Broke's origin stories with 442 and 100 with via the like a Barbell Brigade shirt brands, and I was very impressed. They're doing a tribute to all those 2 Japanese American military divisions. I never heard too much about it outside. You know, and this one really like, wow, this is impressive.
There was a comment on the scope of the film and the look.
Was POW guy a real character or what?
Yeah.
Whatever happened to him?
Oh, he actually got
That's the
sent back to
Akira stat that he was asking about.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I think
Oh,
Kristo Sakamaki.
yeah,
Yeah.
Sakamaki,
So Kristo
yeah.
Sakamaki was right.
Yeah.
So he was. So there was a midget sub that washed up at Bellows, and so his partner washed up dead. But he was the POW #1, and so they kept him at Sand Island. And actually,
Well,
reminds me
them finding
too.
them on the beach was that's real.
That's real,
He found
yeah,
them on
so
the beach
Akui.
like that.
And so Tom Kewpie Tsubota was the first, he captured him, but Akui, of course, got the credit, because, yeah, he got the credit. And so, you know, that was something that I thought was important to show, because most people don't know that. Like, if he was like a white guy, he would be like a, you know, household name, right? Captured the first POW of World War II for America. Right, sorry, it's true. So, but yeah, so QP passed away last year. He was 102 years old, so that was really sad. He passed away in February. He was also the last living Japanese American to have served with Merrill's Marauders. Yeah, so he had a very, and that's actually, that goes back to the, not just the 100-442, but a lot of these guys went to the M.I.S. and the OSS, which is the precursor to the CIA. So they were everywhere, you know, and we just didn't know about them. So it's a bummer. And also, back to the POW question. So the guys from Hawaii were actually classified as POWs, which is even more insulting, right? It's like, how can you be a POW if I immigrated to Hawaii in America? And this is my adopted country, so what the heck, right? I don't have a country. So, because this is all before Executive Order 9066.
So when the war ended, did he stay in Hawaii? Did he go back to Japan or?
Oh, he went back. He actually wrote a book. He wrote a book, and it was like, I bombed Pearl Harbor. It was like, actually, he didn't bomb Pearl Harbor. But, yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. If anyone has a question. Anything you saw?
You
Yeah.
talk about the actors, the ensemble. How can you find the actors?
How do we find
Can
it?
you talk about the ensemble
Um,
and all the casting?
Sure. So, well, some of them, since I've been working on this so long, you know, I've known some of these actors for a very long time, like Chris Tashima, who has the Oscar. I've known him for I don't know, like 12 years. And then Peter Shinkoda, who plays the bad guy in Daredevil, you know, he found me actually. He was like, I love this, I want to be a part of it, I don't care what, you know, just put me as anything. And so a lot of the people who were the smaller roles, you know, like even Mike Ng, who played Hung Wei Ching, I've known him for, gosh, as long as I've been working on this as well. But what was scary was finding the younger guys to play the vets, because we didn't know anybody. So like Kyle, who plays Danny Noy, that was Alex's friend.
Never acted before.
Never acted, right, he did great. But we had a really awesome casting director, Kemi. Yeah, she was
Yes, we did opening casting calls in Hawaii and saw over 100 actors, but like I said, we had to cast 50 people, so a lot of people we saw we ended up casting, and you know, we didn't really have much time for rehearsals or anything like that, so many of these actors, the first time I met them was when they were about to film. So it was, I was grateful though, because, you know, they're all being Asian American and from Hawaii, they all had their own experience that they could bring to the table. And that helped me a ton, and I just kind of would let them, you know, interpret this character as someone who's from Hawaii and make sure it was authentic in that way. And they totally helped me out. So the cast deserves a ton of credit. Kyle especially, young Dead Noy, he never acted before, just did a cold read, and we could just tell he cared more about the story than almost anyone ran into. He read Dan's autobiography and just was obsessed with this story, and because he cared so much, we're like, let's give him a shot, and he ended up doing really well.
That's great to hear.
And then one last point is that some other role, like the smaller roles, like for example Jake.
Oh, yeah,
Shibukuro.
Jake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I've written Jake in. And so some of these people I did write with these people in mind. So that was easy.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's all the time we have here, but thank you all so much for coming out, and let's give another round of applause for
which we found to be very accessible, and would love to hear your reactions, questions, and you know, I'm so grateful to be able to share this broadly with other people. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, without any further ado, we have a little time. Let's welcome back to the stage Bill Kubota and Steve Ozone, and also please Kemi Uka, yeah. Wow, thank you. Please step into the light a little bit. You know, obviously the stories of the internment of Japanese Americans, particularly here in the Bay Area, we're familiar with this story overall. I think there's a growing recognition in these times that in some ways the story is not being told enough. You know, in other parts of the country, it's always important to know when we come across something new. But the story of the M.I.S, Military Intelligence Service, in particular, is one, and I'm so glad you've made this film, because it's a remarkable story that it was almost willfully forgotten. I don't know if, I'm sure you guys know, but I don't know if everyone in the audience knows, one of the language schools was right here in the Bay Area, and has recently been saved and turned into an education center, part of the National Japanese American Historical Society. Have you guys gone out there recently to it? Oh, wow. Well, that will be great. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought, please think of some questions that you want to ask. But I guess the logical one, I'll just get us started while you're thinking about it. If you could, both groups for both films, just mention a little how the idea came about to create this story. You know, what was the impetus behind it? So, you guys want to go first?
I'd like to know that too. That's something that I never asked Bill. Actually, I live in Minneapolis. Bill lives in Troy, Michigan, and one day he called me up and said, "You ever heard of this guy named Seiki Oshiro? He lives in Burnsville, Minnesota." And I said, "No, but I'll look into him." And Bill said he's putting together this list of veterans that served in the Military Intelligence Service. So maybe you can tell me how you found them.
We wanted to look into trying to do a story about the MIS, but you know, these guys are really old and a lot of it's been kind of done, but you're always looking for a hook to hang your story on. When I found the guy with the list, I thought maybe there's something there, and we met him and we realized there was something there. So that's how that went.
For us, you know, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm a chemist. I'm a mom, and our Preeti and our children were going to preschool together at a volunteer preschool, and we were working one day. I don't know what we were doing, cleaning the kitchen or something, and I happened to ask Preeti. I said, "What do you work? What do you do?" And she said, "Actually, I'm a documentary filmmaker." And I said, "Really?" I said, "I've had this idea for a while. My family's had this idea," and I told her about that photo, which is Toyo Miyatake's photo. It's a very famous photo of the internment. And I said, "You know, my father's in that photo. He's recently rekindled a friendship with Bruce, who's the boy in the middle, and we think the third boy is alive, and we want to find him. And we've never been to Manzanar with my father." And I said, "I'd really like to go because he is also of this generation. He's younger than the men in the registry, but he's the last generation that remembers being in the camp." And I said, "I've always wanted to go and understand what that was like, because the way he is now is so embedded in everything that they lost and everything that he had to gain back since then." And so Preeti and I had a wonderful conversation, and the next day she called me and said, "I can't stop thinking about your story. We have to make this a film." And I said, "I don't even know how to do that." But I'll let you talk about, you know, your conversation internally, because they're just phenomenal. Michael Dr. Winston work, I think Preeti in particular is wonderful, and Masha.
Thank you, Kemi. Yeah, it was just a story meant to happen, and you know, we were lucky to be cleaning the kitchen on that one day.
Yeah, but what a reminder of how important it is to document these stories. And gentlemen, I saw most of the men featured in your film have passed away, right? There was a memoriam to them at the end. And I believe we are seeing the very last of this generation. I'm so glad you got those three boys together. Mm-hmm. It's a chilling shot, isn't it, when you see them now and then. Just, it's really great to get this down, really important. So let's open this up a little bit. Do we have any questions out here? Yes?
I have actually been to the M.I.S. language school at Presidio once. It was really, it's mind-blowingly, my goodness, so much content. And I had to ask these three about how did you find out about your family history regarding the M.I.S. and stuff?
I'll repeat it. This young man said he has been out to the M.I.S. museum at the Presidio, and it was full of amazing stuff, and he wanted to know about, and I'm remembering too, the unpacking of the boxes, the discovery maybe of your family's history. Did you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, and I'll let's do a Bill 500. I mean, for our history, again, my father was of this generation that does not talk about it. So when we asked him, when we asked my father's father, he didn't talk about it, and neither did my father's sister. It's funny to see things like these old suitcases and these old boxes and trunks of things, because we had them too. And, we finally, as adult children, I think finally decided that it was time to sort of look into some of these historical documents. So we did find, when my grandfather passed away, a whole bunch of information from him. We did, do a little bit of talking with other contemporaries of my father and some people who were older. I know I did like an oral history project when I was in high school, and all of those people are gone. And so I will say it was very interesting to go to Manzanar, because as far as my father remembering anything, when we were not there, he said, "I can't remember anything." And the minute we got there, he remembered everything. Like so many things that we didn't know. He was 8 years old when he went in, and he said, we found out that he went in as like a test group. There was a test group that went in April, and the camp officially opened in June, and he was part of this test group. And my grandfather had a business, they lost the business, he had a produce market down in downtown LA. They lost everything, went into this test group, and there were still barracks being built. And my dad said, oh yeah, I remember we had no furniture, so there was scrap wood behind the barracks. And so I went to go get scrap woods because maybe we could make a table or a chair. And he said, I went back there and the guard shot at me. And he said, oh, I never went back there again. But I just thought, how can you shoot at an 8-year-old child? I mean, even if it's a warning shot, like how traumatic would that be? And those are stories we never heard. So there's something to, you know, getting people into the places where they have been to like remind them of a whole bunch of other memories.
Maybe my mom knows your dad. She was about the same age in Manzanar back, well, back then and now probably. They all say the same age when they get older. Don't they? It's kind of strange though that when we were trying to get these people to open their chests and boxes, we were just going, because Japanese people will want to clean up before you show up with the cameras, you know. We're going, no, don't touch it. Because they'll go straighten it all up and take stuff, you know, so that was part of the struggle is we knew about these, like with the Doys, they had this chest, and Masanoshi's daughter knew about this big Japanese casket-looking thing. That was their shipping containers the Japanese army used. But we said, don't open it, don't look at it, let us take video of it when you open it. But we were lucky in those 2 cases they didn't clean up before we showed up.
You know, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was gonna say that we couldn't stop Karen from cleaning up at her dad's house. So she said she cleaned up before we got there, and there were boxes all over the floor before we got there.
You know, we've supported a number of these stories we have films on. So the Masamoto, the Merrill's Marauder story, there's a short film on him. And the Hood River is interesting, isn't it? That teacher is a Yasui. Is he part of the Yasui family,
Yeah.
Min Yasui?
Yeah. Min is his uncle.
Yeah, one of the cousins, we made a film with her, Lisa Yasui, many, many years ago, and documented that story. So just to follow up to that, I'm sorry to bring in extraneous stories, but you know, you present us some really important ones. How did you choose, and what's happened now to the registry? Is it part of an official archive? Is the Army at least now recognize the importance of this?
How did we choose?
Which families to go to, you know, within the registry?
Well, part of it was location because we were trying to stretch our dollars through. We originally got a National Park Service grant, confinement sites grant, and so it was all fortuitous. Seiki lives in Minneapolis, so Bill came and he stayed with me. And then Grant lives in Virginia, and I have a sister in Maryland. We stayed with her. M.I.S lives in Phoenix. We stayed with Bill's parents. So it worked out really well for us. We were able to stretch our dollars a lot. What was the other question?
And then what's the Army's attitude of them?
Oh, well, Seiki is still working on the project. And he's connected with a woman in Hawaii, and they're working on adding names of Hawaii vets to the list. And then he's also connected with the Minnesota Historical Society, and so that is going to be housed there. His papers will be housed there. And then we're hoping that through this film that it'll get more exposure. Academics will start looking at it and thinking about continuing the research. And so if there's any academics in the audience that's interested.
Yes, we have a question right here.
Actually, it's not a question, it's a comment. My father here is 98 years old, and he was in Camp Savage, and he supervised a team of Nisei in Hawaii doing a translation of notebooks of soldiers. And so if anyone wants to come interview him, he lives in Saratoga. So he's got a story, and he's 98, and he's always appreciated the work that the Nisei have done, and he's talked, I mean, he doesn't, he wasn't allowed to talk a lot about it, but he talked enough that we were able to bring him here. So.
Wow.
We'd like to talk to you after.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions?
Is the
Yes.
registry available to the public so we can look for family names?
Yes, it's incomplete. The version that's online is incomplete, though. There's PDF. If you Google Seiki Oshiro, the registry, you'll find it. And eventually, I don't know, well, when I get back to Minneapolis, I'm going to talk to him about it and see how far he's got with it.
Do you know if do you guys know about Densho, the online? Okay. And would they be willing to perhaps house some of this information?
We've talked to them. I think, they'll take something. They won't take anything. They came out wrong, but this is an important document that they would be interested in.
Yeah, that's what I feel. Lonnie Ding, some of you may know, there's a producer, a pioneering producer here in San Francisco who did a film on the Japanese-American internment, and it was one of the first depictions of the M.I.S. way back when. Color of Honor was the name of that film. I'm sure you guys know about it. And after Lonnie passed, we helped the family put a lot of her interviews with Nisei soldiers into Densho, where you could find this incredible oral history collection. So if some of you are interested in more of this material, it's called Densho, D-E-N-S-H-O. It's an online archive of records from the period. I think we have time maybe for one more question, if there is one. No, you've been very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Understand what was going on. Late in the war, the military decided that even though they had recaptured a number of the islands, as they went across, and finally Iwo Jima and Okinawa, they realized they were going to have to.
I'm with the National Japanese Historical Society.
Oh, we have a trunk. We have so many things he would love to talk to you.
My personal number, my personal email address is on there.
Oh, thank you.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no.
So like
Did he go out to the M.I.S. building
Who's this gentleman?
No, but he was at Camp Savage in Minnesota for years. He learned Japanese in the snow like that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we should see that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I'd like to come and see you.
Oh, he would love that.
So give me a call or email me. And
You're Brian.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So good to meet
Good to
you.
meet you too.
I'm Abby. If we email or call, Abby and Gerald.
Okay, great.
Nice. Thank you. Very nice to
So
meet you.
I'm glad you were here because I can't see the dark. Who is it? I hope to see you in the future, near future. So please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What?
Yeah, I just talked with one of the vets in a wheelchair about what it's like to learn Japanese, and he said, well, it's not a big deal socially, but writing one is very tough, like Chinese writing. So yeah, but it was a really fun chat with this fella right there, and I had fun. So he had been a lot of stuff around the Pacific area, especially Japan. That maybe that's a big truckload of trunks to fill. That even his daughter was surprised. So I was saying, Game on.